Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay Holzhauer and my presentation is on liability and disaster. And if you look in the upper right hand corner, you'll see a picture of me because I am too technologically challenged to do video. To begin, I'm going to give you two key definitions answering the questions, what is liability and what is a disaster? Liability is the finding of legal responsibility for an individual's act or failure to act. A disaster is a sudden event, such as an accident or a natural catastrophe, that causes great damage or loss of life. There are two types of disaster, natural and unnatural. Natural disasters include hurricanes, floods, and earthquakes, and unnatural disasters include terrorist attacks and wars. There are two main types of liability, direct and vicarious. Direct liability is when someone is being held directly and legally responsible for their actions or lack of. Vicarious liability is secondary liability where someone has a legal association with a guilty party and is therefore held equally responsible for any wrongdoings. Now we're going to move on to the topic of tort liability. A tort is a wrongful act or an infringement of a right other than under contract leading to civil liability. Examples of torts include battery, fraud, misinterpretation, and the tort of negligence. Negligence is the failure to use reasonable care resulting in damage or injury to another entity. This can include medical malpractice, breach of privacy and confidentiality, and gross negligence. Now, you might be wondering how liability and disaster are correlated. Most disasters have a monumental impact on their own. However, in the aftermath, there are often scenarios where further damage is inflicted due to human responses. This can include the negligence of first responders, misinformation regarding potential hazards, and healthcare providers in reasonable care. However, in the past there have been some discrepancies on reasonable care. Unfortunately, in a time of crisis, many healthcare professionals find themselves in a difficult situation. Do the standards for providing reasonable care still prevail if there are not enough resources to provide each patient with the normal care? If there are not enough resources, can doctors still be held liable for insufficient care to their patients and therefore be subject to malpractice lawsuits? These are quotes from the American Medical Association in regards to the previous questions. In 2005, the American Medical Association adopted a resolution declaring the need for national legislation that gives qualified physician volunteers automatic medical liability immunity in the event of a declared national disaster or federal emergency. The provision of reasonable care through medical triage in a crisis may be viewed as insufficient or negligent because it may deviate extensively from normal standards as a result of scarcity of resources. While healthcare professionals are not the only ones at risk for liability in the wake of a disaster, they are a prime example of how people can be affected even when they had the best of intentions, just not enough resources. It is up to us to continue to make strides in the EM field to ensure that the proper consideration is given to both victims and volunteers in the aftermath.